So the Babadook's like a metaphor for her period, right? They start acting all fucking crazy.
Yes, Wake. The Babadook
Yeah, you can't
is
run from that, huh?
that's the Babadook is a woman's period. So that movie's 11 years old now, which is crazy. But y'all just watched the Babadook, and the Babadook is basically one big metaphor for grief, really. I think this horror movie, when it came out, it was considered one of the better films of the year. And it was also considered one of the best horror movies ever made. And I kind of agree with that. I've watched this movie 4 or 5 times now. And I really enjoy it. I don't know if it's one of my favorite horror movies ever, but for its budget, certainly, it's very, very impressive. The Babadook was made for $2 million, which is in movie terms practically free. Just as a like comparison, Hulu made for TV movies typically come in like the Hulu horror movies direct to screener usually come in at like $6 million, and most of the horror movies that you will see in movie theaters are around like $25-30 million. So when you realize that this movie has less than a tenth of the budget of other movies that make it to the movie theater, I think it's infinitely more impressive that this is like such a cheap film by comparison. So I don't know. What did you think of the Babadook?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, Chad? Oh, it was good. Yeah, I mean, definitely comes into not an obvious, but a compelling metaphor for grief, the idea that you can't avoid it. And also kind of tying it back into the fact that, like, it doesn't disappear, which for anyone who's endured grief, I think is significant.
Yeah.
Like, it does live in your basement. It does need to be tended to. You don't get to evade reckoning with your sadness or sorrow. You need to feed it worms and let it heal. Yeah.
Also, I think the metaphor of eating a bowl of worms as going to therapy.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking...
It's pretty spot on. Good. Sometimes you just got to eat a bowl of worms and deal with your shit and talk to a strange person for an hour a week to deal with your grief.
It is what horror is at its best, which is oftentimes putting the finger on the pulse of a core emotion.
Hold on. I disagree that it's about grief. Well, the maker of the film has said that it's about grief and trauma.
Yeah, you're right. It's about their periods. It's about these it's about these periods.
You can't trust these broads.
Once a fucking, I'm telling you, once a fucking month they're gonna flip a fucking lid.
Broads.
They're gonna flip a fucking lid once a month.
Babadook, more like on the rag.
Yeah. No, it was great. It's what horror is at its best, which is because horror is great in that you can, as an ambitious young filmmaker, you can take a high concept film, make it compelling for cheap, because horror is more about what you don't show but allude to rather than what you do.
Yeah.
At its best, at least. And moreover, taking something that is central to the human experience and personifying it, right? Like giving it a face.
I think also some other things that this movie does enormously well is, I think when you have a main character that is submitting to their grief and essentially becoming the antagonist, there are so many times that you won't relate to them. You'll be like, pull it together, bitch. But I think this movie does such a good job of like showing you just the day-to-day death by 1,000 cuts, her sister being a cunt, her job being draining, her kid being a little fucking asshole, the school down her fucking tits, just all of the little tiny things that eventually cause her to snap. Like in the first 20 minutes of this movie, I don't know anybody who has ever watched The Babadook and gone, man, that kid's horrible. You know what I mean? And then, so I think it really puts you in. Also, this movie is 11 years old. And despite essentially having free effects, I think it does a very good job holding up all these years later. Beside that, I love that The Babadook is it's also a love letter to a lot of very classic horror movies. There are direct homages to Phantom of the Opera, Nosferatu very heavily, which we've watched in this film course. And then also the other one, if you ever want to check it out, is Dr. Caligari's Cabinet. The
other one is Dr. Doolittle.
Yeah. But the Somnambulist is the other film that's heavily influenced in its like set design and stuff like that. The autism aspect is so unique. Yes. Yeah.
Autism in movies, hand in hand.
Oh yeah, it's so German expressionist. Yes. I know that the dog really bums a lot of people out, and it bums me out as well. I do think, though, that whenever you have a horror movie that doesn't go to really dark, fucked up places, it sometimes loses its dread. It becomes like a Disney horror movie. And I don't think they wanted to kill the kid or the old woman. So someone had to go, and Bugsy ate that grenade for us.
Yeah. Like a noble beast.
Yeah.
Well, and you could even argue that Bugsy is kind of a metaphor for the fact that when you're grieving, you need to kill your dog.
Oh, okay. Also, the one other thing that I liked about this movie is we haven't watched many famous Australian movies. There are a few that I would like to watch at some point. The one that comes to mind, Crocodile Dundee. Now, the one that comes to mind is like Walkabout, and then there's also one. I'm trying to. Australians, help me out. Is it Wolf Creek, where the tourists get hunted down by the guy? Yes, Wolf Creek. Yeah, so there are some Australian movies that I think are Criterion, The Last Wave as well, but we haven't watched many of them in this film course. And a big point of contention about my film course is that we can watch movies from around the planet from different filmmakers and different regions. And so I thought, all right, we're doing our spooky movie month. We've never watched The Babadook. We've never really watched an Australian film. This is a perfect opportunity, aside from Kangaroo Jack. Do you guys have any questions for Wake and I? Am I just dumb that I didn't pick up on the metaphors for grief in this? I'm not the only one in chat that made the connection after Will and Wake mentioned it, am I? No, I don't think you're dumb. I think a lot of movies will kind of bludgeon you over the head with what the focus of the movie is. I think The Babadook is a little bit more latent, but if you go back and watch this movie through the lens of this is a woman experiencing traumatic grief and stress, and her stress level is ramping exponentially because her son's birthday, which is approaching, coincides with her husband's death. And so her dread and her anxiety and her sadness and her trauma is ramping because that anniversary, her son's birthday, is like this demarcation and reminder that not only is her son or her husband dead, but he died in the pursuit of delivering her child. So the two are inextricably linked. There's one point where the old woman goes, Sam is just like his father. And I think she rebuts that so quickly because she hates the connection of Sam and his dad, because it immediately reminds her that Sam died, or her husband died as a result of taking Sam to the hospital to be born.
I'd also like to let everyone know that there isn't one correct interpretation, and the correct interpretation is irrelevant to what you take from a movie.
Sure.
So while a director might be making something in relationship to their experience of grief, the core emotion of, let's say, a blight so significant that it's unavoidable, right? There's a problem in your life that you can't evade or outmaneuver. That could be anything, down to an addiction, down to debt, down to, even if it's just a sense of loneliness, right? It's a problem that needs to be tended to despite your avoidance of it.
Right.
And even if you didn't experience that, however it is it resonates with you is what it is you take from it. So don't feel like the director's intent is that important. It's about how it moves you.
I would agree with that. I think the end did end up... I think the mom did killing her son. Sorry.
But also reminded me of mentally ill / unstable parents at home struggling with children.
Right, but I think that the idea is that the right amount of trauma and grief and stress can unlock mental illness as well, right? Like, it's not like she was mentally ill in a vacuum and that led to her damaging her son and going on this tirade. It was one leading into the other. I think the mom did end up killing her son in the end. I think the part where it was flickering through TV channels and showed the news where a woman stabbed her son on her birthday was foreshadowing what really ended up happening. But that by that point, she was delusional and warped mentally. Interesting. I mean, that's the darkest interpretation, but look up Lake Mungo, one of the best horror movies from Australia. I love Lake Mungo, so good. So the movie is about the period of a mentally ill woman who overdoses on Perk 30s. That's another interpretation. Whoa, hey, you, video game gimmick. Thank you so much. All right, other questions. Do you think the Babadook was an amalgamation of everything she hated about her child? It kind of sounded like it was saying, Mama, look, when it said Babadook, Dook. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely the similarities there. Also, Babadook is an anagram for bad book. I think there is a lot of that. The Babadook is like her negative feelings towards her kid. I think the news clipping is meant to show you that the Babadook, or like grief that can snap a woman to resent her own child enough to kill it, isn't centralized on this person. It is, the Babadook is more of a ubiquitous threat. And I think also, there's like a whole syndrome where women feel no connection to their child after it's born. And I think the Babadook also kind of represents that. But I was always surprised this movie never got a remake, an American remake. I hate them, or a sequel. But yeah, it kind of just ended there. When does the movie take place? I think it takes place the year it was made, which is 2012. I believe they started filming it. I think 90 minutes or so is the perfect length for a horror film. Do you agree? It depends on the horror film. Like Hereditary, I really don't mind a much longer film. We'll catch up on this interesting convo later off to Snack World. Enjoy the snacks, gimmick.
Mwah.
She mentioned she wrote children's book. Did she write the Babadook as a way to cope with her grief? I like that. That is, yeah, I'll take that. That's awesome. I think the director was against a sequel. Interesting. What was the reaction to the film when it premiered? This film was beloved. This film reminded me of a kind of like a My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where it was released kind of quietly and by word of mouth. A lot of people ended up watching it and loving it, particularly, and I'm not making this up, the gay community. Gays related very heavily to the Babadook and how cunty he was. And like he was like how president is made an honorary graduate. The Babadook was made like an honorary gay, which was very confusing, but also kind of awesome. Yeah. Right up on that. The Babadook's director celebrates Monster's gay icon status. He's trying to stay relevant.
He looks like a Victorian chimney sweep.
Yeah. So just in case you thought I was making that up, I'm not. Like I saying that, I thought it was something that had come to me in a fever dream, but no, that's not me goofing. This actually was a phenomenon in 2014. The Babadook was accidentally included in Netflix's LGBT section, which made the community confused, but they accepted it and it became an icon.
If that's real, that's fucking incredible.
Can you imagine like a twink like Christian just sitting down and being like, I don't know how this is gay, but the Babadook is slaying. The Babadook is actually slaying.
Oh my God, he's valid.
Yes, eat worms, queen.
Yeah, is it boots, Christian? Is it?
Thoughts on the theory that the child actually grew up to be Pay Money Wubby? Yes, valid. I've heard that as well. Heard that as well. Very valid. Very valid. Very true. Reminds me of Disney Plus putting Alien in the little kids section, and there was a huge Cinemorph on the main page of the children's app. That's also incredible. Valid. Give the children what they want.
Yes.
The children yearn for xenomorphs. How did the older film that was shown on the TV when she was hallucinating tie into the theory? It seemed like the origin for the monster, but I'm having a hard time phrasing it. I think there's some level of lore built in there, but more, I think that was a reference to The Somnambulist and to Journey to the Moon, which is another old film. But I'll show you The Somnambulist. So The Somnambulist is an old German impressionist film about a sleepwalker that a doctor trains to murder people. And as you can see, the visual aesthetic of the Babadook is very, very, very heavily influenced by this movie. And so it is basically, I think, the filmmaker's way of making like a reference to the silent film horror era that so lends itself to the filmmaking style of the Babadook. The wolf in sheep's clothing, Frankenstein being unmasked. They were saying darkness hides beneath. That is not Frankenstein being unmasked. That is actually the Phantom of the Opera in that clip. I do. Here, I'll open a new tab. Sorry, I just closed a tab and that was on screen. I watched Cabinet of Dr. Caligari for my college film class a few weeks ago, covering German Expressionism. So cool watching that. Yep. It also makes sense because near the end, she said, I need to sleep multiple times. There you go. So this is essentially a woman just trying to say when women are on their periods, they freak out. That's one.
That's absolutely right.
That's one interpretation. The director took a lot of inspiration from London After Midnight too. Okay, yeah, for sure. It's interesting that film style German expressionist is a PTSD response to World War I, so it ties into trauma. There you go. The director took a lot. I first took it as a metaphor for stresses of a single parent literally eating her up inside until she just descends into madness and death. Not gonna lie. Well, I
mean, that's also an adjacent stressor. You know.
Boom. There you go.
Like she is also like circumstantially exactly that.
Yes. I heard the director took a lot of inspiration from how bad it feels to be a Jets fan. Okay.
I was born into the Babadook.
Okay. Any other... I hate this team. Any other questions? Are there any other good horror movies with similar thematic focus in terms of plot and the scary thing being a metaphor for specific non-horror phenomenon? The one I would recommend is El Orfanato, which is a Spanish language horror movie that is phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's also kind of childlike and it's got a heart. That's a Guillermo del Toro film that he produces and writes, and it has a different director, if I'm not mistaken. I know Guillermo has a relationship to it, but he didn't direct it. And the other one I would recommend is It Follows, which is a big metaphor for getting sexually transmitted diseases.
Getting followed.
Was that a top 15 horror movie for you? I think it's a very good horror movie, and I recommend it to a lot of people, but I am a horror purist, and I've seen every horror movie ever made, and for me, I need them a little bit more kinky and fucked up.
Yeah. I think if someone came to me like, I'm looking for a great horror movie, for the experience of horror, that would not be the movie I recommend, because I think that it is more of like a treatise on an emotional experience more than it is like, I'm going to be spooked and scared, you know?
I honestly think the whole thing being such a direct metaphor makes it way less scary as a horror film, but more compelling at least.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
It's just too on the nose about the whole period thing.
Why would she feed the Babadook in the end? Is it like a way of acknowledging that she still has that sadness over the loss of her husband, but isn't going to be ashamed of it moving forward? I think it's exactly that. I think as much as feeding the Babadook worms is evidence that she's, living with it, I think also the way that she talks to CPS when they're like, why haven't you celebrated your birthday, mate? And she's like, his father died on the way to the hospital when he was being born. And you can see they're both kind of like, and she's like, so we celebrate it. We talk about it often.
Sorry, go about your day.
Yeah. You need to watch Confessions 2010, obscure Japanese horror movie. It'll change your life. You will never drink milk again. Oh my God.
You said it's called Confessions?
Rank these horror movies about grief. Hereditary, Babadook, Bring Her Back, Talk to Me, Antichrist. Number 1, Hereditary. Number 2, Bring Her Back. Number 3, Talk to Me. Number 4, Babadook. Number 5, Antichrist. What's Wake's favorite scary movie? What's your favorite scary movie, Wake?
I don't know if I'd say that I have one, to be honest with you. Horror is a genre that I kind of was like more so tasked with studying than I personally gravitated towards. In the same way some people would avoid spicy food.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I always
like
it
spicy food. However, like with horror, I tend to be more escapist with my media, and I want to almost feel I like senses of adventure. You know, I'm a big Lord of the Rings, Hero's Journey, Andy, and I like comedies. It's more of what I gravitated towards. I like a good dark comedy. Like, I don't need to feel great, but I want to typically chuckle because I'm trying to avoid my own sense of despair. However, with that said, some films that I remember studying and really liking was like Let the Right One In, which I think is a Norwegian kind of vampire saga that's really good.
We've watched it here.
Yeah, it's very good.
By the way, Prairie Fairy, happy birthday. Yeah, Let the Right One In is
Is it
very
Swedish?
good.
I thought it was Norwegian.
The Babadook features several Easter eggs, most notably the use of sound effects from old video games like Warcraft, Mortal Kombat, and Resident Evil to represent Amelia's deteriorating mental state and sleep deprivation. Interesting. If you watch Let the Right One In, don't watch the American one. Girl gamer. Any other questions? And yeah, for me, horror movies are also about timing. I could watch good horror movies at a bad time and it won't do it for me, but mid horror movie at a right time leaves an impression. Interesting. Have you seen A Tale of Two Sisters? Yes. What kind of horror movies specifically address addiction? Requiem for a Dream.
That'll do.
Ass to ass. Where do you think a higher budget would have improved the movie? I feel like it really benefits from being low budget. I think that's a little presumptive. I think there are some effects that maybe as a filmmaker, I can see how the director like cheated, I would say, or Hollywooded the effects to get them done with no budget. But I think there's like just an extra $1 million or $2 million there. I think the sound design and some of the effects could have been tightened up a little bit. But I think the cast is really good. I don't think the movie needs like $100 million budget. But I do think with a little bit of extra money, the director probably could have had a little bit more freedom on set.
That's really all it is.
Yeah,
I mean, but granted, budgetary constraints can create a lot of creative solutions that make films great. So
I agree with that.
It's hard to say.
I noticed that the Babadook looks like the kid looks like the kid magician outfit with the top hat and cape, messy hair too. Interesting. Director would definitely have said no to a couple extra $1 million. Yeah. Wouldn't have said no. Yeah, I agree. Have you seen The Nightingale by the same director? I think I have, yes. Do you consider Coherence a horror movie? If it's the one I think... Wait. Coherence. Yeah, Coherence is... It is a horror movie. It's almost a Lovecraftian horror movie, if I remember correctly. It's definitely got some horror elements. Oh, God.
Go up.
What's the kinkiest horror movie you like? Ichi the Killer, for sure. Is the kid still acting? No idea. Do you consider Wild Hogs a horror movie? Yes. Thoughts about jump scares versus jump shocks? You brought it up during the end of the movie where a chatter said loud equals scary, but you think that being loud can lead to it being seen as forced, so to say, or so to speak, where it isn't actually like a scary occurrence, but just like heavy audible output that invokes human reaction. It's a tough question because you're essentially asking like, are spices cheating, or should a chef be able to create a flavor without that kind of exterior force, right? I think in a master creator's arsenal, sound is another quiver that can be used to invoke a lot of like terrifying, like for example, I think it's not a jump scare, but I think the most terrifying audio of all time is...
It also creates rhythm, by the way. You know, like, am I expecting this? Am I getting lulled to sleep, etc.? There's an element of suspense that that kind of audio design can create.
Yes, I think this is the most terrifying sound design ever. But I think sound design in horror movies is a lot about contrast, right? And I think a lot of filmmakers, when they over jump scare, the contrast doesn't work anymore. If you just pack your entire horror movie with wall-to-wall jump scares, it loses effect. But when you mix the film where it goes from silence to loud to medium to grating to having really eerie sound, you can create a much more terrifying tapestry than you can if you don't. They did a study one time where they had a bunch of people watch a Friday the 13th movie with the dance of the Nutcracker. They basically had the Nutcracker playing in the background the whole time, and basically no one was afraid. Like it like fully destroyed the movie in a way that it like became a comedy almost. So when I tell you like loud equals scary, it doesn't necessarily, it's not like a necessarily like a 1-to-1 conversion, but good sound is essential for like a Criterion scary film.
Like spice
Unless you're a
equals
sound film.
tasty. Not always. I can tell you that no spice pretty much always means not tasty, you know?
Yeah.
No sound likely means not scary, unless it's in contrast to a lot of sound.
Can we watch Event Horizon next week? Maybe.
Well, your next one's going to be straight up like your Halloween one, essentially.
Yeah. Favorite setting / period for horror? I love dialogue and the look of the witch. Dude, give me the 80s. A Quiet Place, though, again, that movie has a tremendous amount of contrast, though. If you actually watch A Quiet Place, it's not a totally quiet film. It is long stretches of quiet, syncopated with very, very loud parts of the movie, which, you know, puts you on edge. Do you consider Bruce Campbell a final girl, like a scream queen? Nah, he's kind of his own thing. I know you watched Scream recently. Don't remember if you said it, but is Ghostface your favorite slasher? Ooh, no, he's not. I think the first Scream is fantastic. I would probably say my favorite slasher is either Leatherface or Freddy. And I'd probably have to give it to Freddy. There's something just magic about Freddy. Welcome to prime time, bitch. How did anyone find Skidamarink scary at all? Maybe I just missed something, but that movie had like zero sound. Skidamarink is more of like a deeply unnerving film. Thoughts on extreme over the top Japanese horror like Tokyo Gore Police. So that's called J Extreme Cinema is the name of that genre. And I like it. I think there are films that kind of succeed, like Tetsuo the Iron Man, Ichi the Killer. Is it a genre of film that I like miss? Like, do I go back and I'm like, God, I wish they would make a bunch more J Extreme Cinema? Not really. It was kind of like a Labubu in that it was like a trend in horror that was kind of fun to explore. And there are good movies in that genre, and there are bad movies in that genre. Is there any good sci-fi horror other than Alien, Italian Hands? So many. So many films. The Thing, Sunshine, there are Event Horizon. Yeah, there's a plethora. All right. I think that's going to be it. I have a guest. That was a good film night.
I mean, I'm legitimately out of my element when it comes to a lot of horror, so don't mistake my silence as disinterest. I am interested in hearing. You have such a encyclopedic knowledge of horror that listening to you speak was better than me attempting to pretend I knew. You know? Suggest a movie for horror? I mean, like, I was more of like, I was schooled in the thrillers of old, a lot of Hitchcock and shit. Like, I think Rear Window is a genius film, personally. Not a lot of people are going to agree because it's old. First of all, Hitchcock's kind of a cunt. And two, old, golden age of Hollywood stuff gets exalted in a lot of film bro discourse because it's, first of its kind. But the idea of creating a static character observing a neighborhood, to me, is a unique kind of take on horror in which typically things are happening to someone as opposed to someone observing things happening around them.
Yes. Well said. Well, shit. We've done it all, ladies and gentlemen. I want to send you over to a friend of mine who went to TwitchCon with me. I'm sending you over to Jay Dilla. I'm glad to be back in streaming for you tomorrow. I think I'm going to go watch the football game with Austin Show, but I will be back Friday, maybe, if I don't have to go to San Francisco to get a passport to go to China. Blow my brains out. Anyway, I appreciate you all coming through for another film night. I'm sorry I was late. Have a wonderful evening. Stay dangerous. Good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow, the next day. Go fuck yourself. It's after 12 tomorrow.